People pay good money to see this movie. When they go out to a theater, they want cold sodas, hot popcorn, and no monsters in the projection booth.
Everyone pretend podcasting isn't boring.
Turn it off. Turn it off.
Hey folks, welcome to a special episode of The Projection Booth. I'm your host, Mike White. On this episode, I'm talking with Kourtney Roy and Jason Deline. She's the director, he's an actor, and they both are behind the film Kryptic. It is a horror drama all about a woman searching for a missing monster hunter. Thanks so much to Kourtney and Jason for their time, and thank you so much for listening. Hope you enjoyed the interview. Where'd you meet?
Casting director. Self-tape. That's how I met Jason. I met Jason before he met me. Because he obviously sent in a tape for one of the roles, and we all loved him. We wanted him to be Caleb, basically. I'd never met him before. I live in Paris. I don't know anybody on the scene in Vancouver. It was all kind of new territory for me.
They used casting director Judy Lee out of Vancouver, who's a fantastic casting director. She does tons of work in Vancouver, and through my agent, I got the role. I got to see the script, and yeah, it just blew me away, actually. And yeah, I was really excited to do it. And we got to talk on Zoom a couple of times, me and Kourtney and Amber, producer, and felt like there was a connection. And yeah, I just fell in.
Such a whirlwind too, because we meet a few times on Zoom, and all of a sudden I go into production, and I'm like, obviously you're working on whatever the hell you do when you're preparing, and I'm just basically trying to keep ahead of this hurricane behind me. But all of a sudden, the day of a couple weeks later, all of a sudden Jason's there on set. You're like, oh my God, we're Caleb. Yeah, I'm like, just very fast, very surreal.
Kourtney, tell me a little bit about your background, because I know that photography is one of your things, because you seem to have a lot of interest in a lot of things.
No, I'm a photographer. That's my profession. That's how I earn my living. I work in, I'd say, like a photographic artist. If we want to be a little, what's the word? Snobby. Pretentious would be the word. Photographic lens-based artist. Some people say that. It's not so pretentious. Anyway, yeah. I've been working as a photographer for 20 years, and I have no really background in cinema. Obviously, I have a big love of cinema, and had done some short in my time, a few shorts, and also had done some video work more for like when I do commercial work, advertising, fashion, stuff like that. Obviously not in the same scale as actually doing a feature film at all, but having a little bit of experience with that. Yeah, I was just working with Paul, the writer, actually, who proposed that he wanted to write a script for me based on my work. So it was a big collaboration with him to get the script done. He's obviously the writer, but we worked on the story together quite closely, quite intimately. Yeah, it was a big leap, big leap.
Yeah, I was curious about this. This is your first feature film. How does that come about for you?
It was like a lot of luck, a lot of just being at the right place at the right time. Obviously, Paul wrote a lovely script, a wonderful script. And once it was written, we were, what do we do now? I don't have any contact in cinema. And Paul, although he's been writing for years, he had never had a film yet produced. So we were both in the dark a bit, just asking friends of friends to give us some advice. And through a friend of a friend, we met Amber and Josh, our producers, Canadian producers, and they loved the script. And then I said, let's apply for telefilm funding. We'll see what happens. And it happens. And it was only a couple of months from then. So we had 2 months to prepare the application, which was a pretty big process. And 6 months later, we had a green light. We had funding. So it was very surreal. Apparently it happened very fast. From beginning to end, about 4 years, which apparently is quite fast for quick for a feature film.
And then, Jason, I think you've been working in the industry for 30 years, more than 30 years. How did you even decide to become an actor?
Well, that happened when I was still a little kid, really. When I was very young, I grew up listening to a lot of old tapes and records of 50s and 60s music. That's what my parents liked. And I went to, when I'd visit my grandparents, they'd always have the radio on. That was just a thing always on in the background. And I fell in love with radio and hosts and things. And so I used to pretend to host a radio show from my living room when I was probably 6 years old. And I just loved performing. I got into comedy and loved Saturday Night Live. I always wanted to do sketch comedy, which I've done quite a bit of in Toronto and Chicago. And yeah, something I always wanted to do is get in front of people and perform. I think I started enjoying the escape of that, putting on someone else's skin to take the focus off myself. And then it became just a great way to explore emotions and empathy and stories. And it's amazing to be able to just play in different people's mindsets and really see what makes people tick. And it helps me learn more about myself too, and then have more tools for the role. So really from a very young age, I was interested, and I did plays in high school and did take the radio path after high school. I went to college for radio, and I did that for a while, and I really loved it. But then I still had that pull to get back into performing. And yeah, it's always just been part of my life, something I've always wanted to do, and I still really love it.
To say it's a little surreal talking with you today, because I've been doing a rewatch of a lot of the X-Men things, as well as Warehouse 13 of all things. So I've seen you a few times over the last few days.
I really love getting to do even small parts and different things, because I think I was playing with a security guard in Warehouse 13. And it's just fun to see behind the scenes of how different kinds of characters and different kinds of people live their lives, and carry a bunch of keys around and see the behind the scenes stuff, like where they're looking at monitors and things. I love exploring the world. I'm a very curious person, and I think that lends itself to this profession for sure.
How do you prepare for a role like Caleb?
This was a really interesting one. It made me nervous because he just felt so sexual to me and so swaggery and dangerous. And I didn't want to be flippant about that. I didn't want to have too much fun with it, but I did definitely have fun with it. So I really just tried to think about what I've heard in the world, what I've experienced in the world, what life was like as a teenager when I was a self-conscious boy, just learning how to talk to women and other people, and how do you use your confidence, and how do you use defense mechanisms? What scares you? What kind of persona do you put on to make yourself feel safe in the world? And maybe you don't realize that your actions or words have consequences. You're just trying to be you, and you're so focused on growing up and fitting in with the world that you're not always able to understand what other people's experience is. And then from that, you become a person and you start to make choices. And sometimes you learn to make new ones, and sometimes people don't. And I feel like Caleb isn't the most in tune with how to be empathetic to other people's needs. I think he's very much about his id and his desires, and he seems very comfortable with that. And I'm someone who really tries these days to be empathetic and to understand other people's experiences and to be inclusive and recognize my privilege as a white male who didn't grow up in poverty. There's just so much power that comes along with that. But growing up, you don't think about that. You think, well, what about me? I have struggles too. I'm this and that. Trying to get into Caleb was like trying to wind back the clock a little bit and try to, well, what if I don't care about other people? But what if it's not from a malicious standpoint necessarily? It's just that everything I'm doing is fine. We're all having a good time here without realizing necessarily that you're taking advantage of people. And so it was an interesting line to walk with Caleb. I didn't want to play him as a straight ahead villain, because we do meet people in our day-to-day lives who are charming and fun to be around, but we're not quite sure if we're safe with them. And sometimes we realize that when it's too late. And there were just a couple of points in the film where we thought, how far are we going to go with this kind of scenario? Do we want to paint him as a bad guy? What's actually happening between him and Kay/Barb? And I think we found a really nice balance where it felt believable that this guy was likable but dangerous. And yeah, so it was interesting to really think about that and feel it through. And what I've been saying is that I didn't really know how to feel confident as that character and feel comfortable with it. And what I did was borrowed his confidence, borrowed his attitude. And what if I'm just him? What if I can just be him? And it was like different than anything I'd ever played, in that if I play a lawyer or a cop or something, I'm like, it's Jason as a lawyer or a cop, and I'll just go through these things. But this guy was a little bit different, where I had to take his personality and put it on over my own. And then we did become comfortable. I slipped into it and I just moved around and talked as him. And it was fun. It felt good, but it was nice to have the boundaries. It was nice to have the intimacy coordinator and of course, Kourtney directing to make sure all the pieces are in place. We're choreographing things, all the lines are there and everything. But I felt safe that I could really become that guy without being dangerous. So yeah, it was interesting to play in that world for a little bit.
Kourtney, as this is your first feature, what were some of your biggest challenges?
The biggest challenge, I think, for me was actually prepping to be a director in terms of working with actors. Because as photography, you work a lot with models, but communication is, you do not communicate the same way. And I figured that out, or learned that I had some work to do shortly after we got like fully funded. We had sent off all the applications, we spent months doing not paperwork, lots of pitches and decks and lots of fun stuff like that, helping create the visual world. And also I had about a year basically being like, what do I do? What do I do to prep for this? Wow, because this sort of slippery profession, being a director, is not like really a school, like a technician, certain things and stuff like that, right? Where you're going to learn this trade or this box of tools you have. And Amber, my Canadian producer, one of the Canadian producers, I asked her, I was like, what should I be doing? I want to be preparing, I want to be doing stuff. I don't know what to do. And she said, well, here's some books. So she gave me some books, and one of them was Judith Weston's directing actors. And I read that and I was like, oh God, I have some work to do. So I was like so happy I read that like a year in advance. So I basically launched into taking classes at the NFTS in London, the UK, directing actors, doing online classes with Judith Weston, script analysis with Amy Verba, an acting coach who used to be Shelley Winter's assistant, if I'm not mistaken, and also won like the Lee Strasberg Prize many years ago. And I was working with her, not because I wanted to be any sort of acting, but actually just to figure out what's the process of actors going through, what are they doing, and all this stuff, and how can I bring out the best in them based on what I want. So that was basically the biggest, which is still probably, I'm still learning. Probably going to be probably a long learning curve to do that. But that's something, because visually, I feel very comfortable. My visual style, location scouting, anything has to do with the visual realm of the film. I wasn't nervous at all. It was actually really working with actors. Nervous, I wasn't terrified. I was just more like I wanted to make sure that I had my own toolbox ready to help them do whatever they needed to do.
I think you did fantastically that way too. It was a lovely set to work on, because you did definitely feel confident in what was your background, and then the stuff you weren't experienced with, you trusted other people. And that to me is so wonderful. When sometimes directors think they have to wear every hat, and then they're stretching themselves out too much and nothing gets done well. But to me, it seemed like you focused on what you could do and trusted everyone else to do what they do. And it just felt wonderful. You had a very light touch. You trusted us and you just let us be who we needed to be. And if you needed a little shift.
I'm not interested in controlling the actors, that's for sure. I have a very good friend too, a very French actor, Slimane Dazi. He's a very good friend of mine, and he was doing a lot of just rehearsing with me and stuff like this. And a lot of times he just said, he goes, if you chose them, you can't trust them. If you chose them, you cast them. He goes, actually, all your work's kind of done. Just leave them alone. Unless obviously you do little tweaks and stuff. And I was like, yeah. And actually, just leave them alone. It's so much less work than I'm hovering over you, like trying to like micromanage you. So for everybody, I'm like, okay, just do your thing. I wish.
I imagine as a photographer, you're used to holding the camera and actually being the one that sets up the shots and doing all that. How is that working with all the technical crew and especially your cinematographer?
I love actually not using a camera. I've been touching cameras for 20 years. I've been working with equipment and stuff and photographer, working with my own lighting, my own cameras, photographer, you wear all the hats of all the trades at any given point of any project you're doing. So it was actually really nice to just basically delegate, and everybody has townspeople have all their own jobs, and I've discussed with them, show them mood boards, and then they go off and do their thing and come back and show me amazing, stunning stuff that I just didn't was even better than what I expected. I think it's great. I love working film. I like being a director in the sense I'm like, oh, I'm just sit there and talk to people about what I want, and they interpret it. Lovely.
How was the post process for you? How was it finally bringing everything together?
I found it actually quite nice. So much less stressful than production. We spent I don't know how many months and editing and then sound and mixing, grading. I love all this stuff. It's slow, methodical. You don't write that day, you go back the next day, you rework it. There's a lot more forgiveness and leeway than if you're on set. I mean, obviously on set you can do more take, but you're never going to go back and shoot that scene again unless you really messed it up or like there's some huge ass problem. A lot more pressure in a way, which is fine. But yeah, I just felt people like, oh, post is so stressful. I'm like, no, I like it. I like sitting in an office. It's fine.
I had fun doing the post too. We had to do some ADR for some of the screaming. There's a part where I wake up in the woods and screaming, and we needed to do some additional recording for that. So we got really creative at this studio in Vancouver, and I had a bowl of water that I was drinking and gargling to make it sound like I had the stuff in my mouth, and that was really fun. A good time. Yeah, Kourtney was directing remotely. I don't know. Were you in Paris at that time?
London or Paris, I can't remember. Yeah, we were all on the Zoom call, so I was somewhere in Europe anyway.
Did you shoot this in British Columbia and Vancouver?
Outside of Vancouver, yeah. And Hope. A couple hours outside of Vancouver.
Yeah, where they shot First Blood. There's a big wooden Rambo, like chainsaw carved statue of Sylvester Stallone as you drive into the town. It's wild.
I love shooting in Canada, so it was great. It was really fun. But yes, specific impression Canadians. I live in France. Canada's a walk in the park.
And your dad still lived in here, right? He lives in BC. Yeah. And he's in the movie.
And yeah, I have all my family lives in Canada. I'm the only one who's living abroad.
Is Fantasia your premiere?
Our premiere was at South by Southwest, and then it's at Quebec premiere because we actually showed we have screened at Cuffed as well in April, which was really fun as well in Calgary, which I went to.
Can you tell me what the experience was seeing this on the big screen for the first time?
I was pretty impressive, actually. Yeah, I'd never seen it with an audience before. The cinema in South by Southwest is a really impressive, beautiful cinema with amazing sound, amazing images, the color, the light. It was really exciting. I was nervous, but not like in a nervous, like it's going to be messy and messed up. It was just more, can't wait. The expectations, though. It was really fun. It made the film much more fun to watch because I've seen it so many times. So I'm not that excited about watching it anymore. But when you watch it for the first time with an audience, your whole perspective's changed. So I really enjoyed watching it with an audience. I do like watching it with an audience, actually.
So has the filmmaking bug bitten you? Are you going to do your next feature pretty soon?
Yeah, definitely. Have another project just starting, just in the baby stages of development. So hopefully, I don't know how soon it's soon, but yeah, hopefully in the near future, see something.
And then Jason, I know you always have to be hustling, getting that next role lined up. What's coming up for you?
I can't talk about the thing I'm shooting right now, unfortunately, but watch this space. There's some stuff happening. But most recently with my Dead Boy Detectives episode on Netflix, where I get to play an act murdering dad. So that's pretty fun. And whatever this thing Kourtney's doing, I'm going to be begging for a role in that.
Yeah. We'll talk after date.
Is there a good place for people to keep up with the movie or with you guys out online?
I post a lot of stuff that's happening on Instagram. Anything I'm allowed to, I post. That's all current events will be up there on my Instagram.
How about you, Jason?
I'm not the best social media person. I drop in and out here and there, but I trust publicists and the other people to do that stuff, and I'll definitely amplify. So if you go to my Instagram, you'll see all the same stuff Kourtney's posting, but a day later. So you might as well go.
That's what I do. I make really nice posts and everybody just reposts.
Jason and Kourtney, thank you so much for your time. This was great talking with you.
Yeah. Thank you so much. I'm so glad you like it.